1. You gotta tell me action, mama. You gotta count down, then say action.
3, 2, 1, action!
Fast, you the maid, so you bad. I'm a savage. Classy, bougie, ratchet. Sassy, moody, nasty. Acting stupid, what's happening? Bitch, what's happening? Bitch, I'm a savage.
Happy Easter, guys, and welcome to another episode of Murder Meals. Today's episode is coming from my home state, Ohio. Today's case actually happens on Easter, so I thought this would be the perfect case to bring to you all today. For today's meal, I'm going to be showing you guys how I make ribs and my banana pudding. So come on and make sure, if you haven't already done so, like, subscribe, and let's get to it. March 30th, 1975 started out as any normal Easter. The police were down at the station, probably mad that they had to work on the holiday, when they get a phone call with someone stating it's been a shooting and then abruptly hanging up the phone. Police then rush over to 635 Minor Avenue over in Hamilton, Ohio. And what they find is very shocking. They find 11 dead bodies at the home with one survivor named James Urban Rupert. Mr. Rupert did admit immediately that he did shoot and kill his entire family. Now, a lot of people were actually shocked by the tragic events that happened in this home on Easter. They didn't expect it. They didn't see any signs of James having the killer spirit in him. But when you look back at his history, things become a little different. Let me give you some backstory on James and his whole family. So James Urban Rupert was born March 29th in 1934, a long time ago. He was born to parents Leonard Rupert and Charity Rupert. He did have an older brother. This skin is not skinning. He did have an older brother, Leonard Jr. Rupert. Ooh, y'all, I struggle getting that membrane off. But anyways, it was said that the family actually grew up pretty poor. I don't want to say in poverty. Is in poverty and poor the same thing? Either way, poor. It was said that they grew up in a little shack with no indoor plumbing, which I guess at the time wasn't just too unusual, but I guess they didn't have any running water at all, so they used to have to use the little outboxes. I don't even like porta potties, so I couldn't imagine. Now, his mother, she was a lovely woman. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. She made it no secret that she did not care for her second child, James. She made it very clear that she wanted her second child to be a daughter, and she got a son. She didn't even take that up with her husband, not with the child. She constantly told him how she regretted having him and he was a mistake, and how much she disliked him, hated him, and just terrible things to him. Now, the dad, he wasn't any better. He was an alcoholic, real bad temper. The only difference with him is that the mother adored her oldest son, Leonard Jr., but couldn't stand James. But the dad, on the other hand, he didn't like neither one of them. Now, he didn't like James a little bit more, but he didn't like neither one of them. He was very verbally abusive, physically abusive, emotionally abusive, just abusive as a whole. So he just, growing up, had a horrible childhood. And he was also a very sickly little boy. It was said that he had really bad allergies and asthma, and he had a really bad respiratory situation, which I know all about those because my son is the exact same way. But the thing is with James is that his respiratory issues and asthma was so bad that it prevented him from being able just to have a normal functioning childhood. The family, well, the dad actually breeded or raised chickens in the back of the shack. And due to the fact of his allergies and asthma was so bad that he couldn't help partake with the family business, which led to his parents just disliking him even more, like it was his fault that he had them weak little lungs. So he used to always spend his time inside at school. He wasn't able to go to recess nor participate in gym, and he just was very socially secluded. It was said that due to his medical issues, he used to actually walk with a slump in his back due to just the amount of pain that he was constantly in. And then you had his brother, who his mother adored and his dad preferred a little bit better, who was very outgoing. He was very smart. He was athletic. He was just the golden child, especially when you placed him next to his brother James. Now, at the age of 12, unfortunately, their father, Mr. Leonard Rupert, he did die. I don't know what he died of, forgot to look, but he died. Now, at this point, it was said that Leonard Jr., the older brother, the older son, he at that point took over the role as man of the house, and he stepped up in a big way. Now, he basically picked up where his father left off with the abuse of his brother, and the mother was over there encouraging it. She actually encouraged him to beat on his brother and just treat him terribly. And the mother, she picked up her abuse, and it was actually said that it got worse. Leonard would do things such as beat on his brother, lock him in the closet, and he even actually sat on his head to the point to where I guess he passed out, or just didn't. If this is a little sickly little boy and you sitting on him, and then the mama just encouraging it's just crazy. So it actually got so bad to where James, he couldn't take it anymore. So at the age of 16, he actually ran away from home. And the purpose of him running away from home was he wanted to end his life. So at that point, he ran away from home in order to end his life. His plan was to hang himself with a bed sheet, but unfortunately, he was unsuccessful with that. So he had to return home. Now, most people, once they find out that their child or their little brother, is in such an emotional state to where they think that the only option is to end their life, they'll have some concern. But not old mama and brother. Once he got home after being unsuccessful with ending his life, he actually got in trouble. So instead of them consoling him, they just beat him and fussed at him. So that was how they handled that. So James didn't have a very good childhood. A lot of people, when they don't have a good childhood, they look towards the future. And they say, you know what, it wasn't, my childhood wasn't it for me, but I'm gonna make a comeback in adulthood. But sadly for him, it didn't get any better. As a full-grown adult, James was actually only 5'6", and he weighed 135 pounds. He was described as quiet, modest, bookish, shy, and an unremarkable man. That was their words, not mine. Now, after 2 years in college, he did drop out. Now, he did later train and become a draftsman, which is, from what I researched, seemed like it was still a pretty decent job or career field. Now, unfortunately, most of the time, he did remain unemployed and single. Now, he did have one girlfriend that he said that he was really into. I don't know if they really fell in love, but he did have one girlfriend, but unfortunately, that didn't last long. Allegedly, she cheated and the relationship ended. So at this point, little Jamesy, my son's name is James, and he got asthma. Now hold up now. We're not gonna manifest that or claim that over here. On the other side, you had James' brother, Leonard Jr., who was actually doing very well for himself. He was very athletic, apparently good looking. Now, Leonard Jr. actually went on to college and he got a degree in electrical engineering. He was very successful. He and his wife actually bought a home. Now, the thing about it is his wife was actually his brother's ex-girlfriend. Now, mind you, I did state that James had a girlfriend, but his girlfriend cheated on him and then the relationship ended. So, now, they went on ahead and had 8 children together. So you have James over here struggling, and then his brother over here flourishing with his woman. Now, throughout the years, James became increasingly paranoid and depressed. He believed that not only were his mother and his brother out to get him, but also the FBI. He thought them boys was out. He thought that the FBI was tapping all of the telephones to all of the places that he frequented on a regular basis because he was that important. He also thought that the Highway Patrol was following him as well. And there was also an incident where someone was calling down to the local library and making threats, and the police actually came and questioned him. When that happened, he assumed that his family implicated him in that incident, so his paranoia was just off the radars. Now, the biggest grievance that he had with his brother was that he was convinced that his brother was tampering with his vehicle, doing things such as loosening his bumper and putting holes in his exhaust. Now, around this time, James actually took an interest in guns, and he actually got his first gun. Now, he started target practicing, and he was actually pretty good at it. He would actually be seen down at the local river doing target practicing. He would line up those little cans and then be out there, pew, 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 just knocking them down. Now, in hindsight, for anybody, it's just, a good little activity, sport, venture, whatever you want to call it, that they get into. But for him, it finally made him feel as if he was a man, just due to everything he'd been through in his life. This finally made him feel like he was that boy. However, it wasn't enough to fully overcome every issue in his life. Over the next 10 years, his mental state would just continue to deteriorate and just go downhill rapidly. In February of 1975, James was about 41 years old at the time. And at this time, he started, inquiring about silencers for his gun. And also at this point, James was living back at home with his mother due to he didn't have a job and he didn't have no money. He actually owed his mom and his brother some money due to them loaning him money, but he lost majority of his money in the stock market crash, just like, unfortunately, a lot of people at that time. So he was at home living with his mother, no job, couldn't pay bills and rent, and she was getting frustrated, but also he was starting to drink heavily. And his mom kind of had the idea and the mindset of, well, if you can afford to drink, you can afford to pay some rent, which completely understand. So at this point, we already know that James' mama from the jump didn't too much care for him. But the fact that he was now living with her, wasn't paying any bills, drinking heavily, she was just growing increasingly annoyed and just frustrated with him. and she actually started threatening to put him out on the street and evict him due to the fact that he wasn't able to pay her in order to stay. The night before the murders, James went into his favorite local bar to actually celebrate his birthday. So he had a few drinks and he was clearly visibly upset. So the bartender asked him what was wrong. So he told her about his mother and all the issues he was having there and his money issues and how he was about to soon be homeless and just basically his problems. He stated that he needed to take care of this problem as soon as possible. So he actually left the bar, and then 2 hours later he returned and the bartender saw him again, and she asked him had he taken care of his problems, and he stated not yet. So March 30th, 1975, Easter Sunday, is a joyous merriment time for most families. The whole family, James's whole family actually came over to his mother's house. So his brother, his sister-in-law, and all of his nieces and nephews. There were 8 of them. So James was actually upstairs when everybody came, just sleeping off the previous night's events. He came downstairs like around 4 p.m. to greet his whole family. Now, it was actually said that they did all of the traditional Easter things. They even had an Easter egg hunt for the kids. So this whole time, James was actually having a pretty good time with his family. He was enjoying conversations with his brother. They actually talked about a little bit of politics and just had a good little Easter Sunday. But for whatever reason, all of a sudden, James had a burst of depression. So at that point, now, let me mind you that this is actually being told from James' side. So at the end of the day, we'll never know if this is 100% correct, but this is what James had said. I should have been said that, but this is what he had said was. So he told the family that in order to kind of get into a better mood, he wanted to go shooting down at the lake. So he supposedly went back, got his gun to go shooting. So when he came back to the kitchen, his mother was actually at the stove. His brother and sister-in-law were sitting at the kitchen table, and one of his nieces were in the restroom while another one waited for her turn. I guess she had to go to the restroom as well. And the rest of the children were actually in the living room, just playing around, just enjoying their Easter. Now, when he came back down, his brother Leonard turned to him and asked him, "How's the Volkswagen?" Now, mind you, James already thought that Leonard was playing with him and trying to sabotage him, messing with his vehicle. So apparently that just made him snap and go into a rage. So he took the gun that he had, aimed it at his brother's face, and shot him dead in the face and killed him. He then turned to his sister-in-law, aka his ex-girlfriend, and shot her in the head, killing her. At this point, the mom was in the kitchen, and it was said she was in there making sloppy joes. Why they was eating that for Easter, I don't know. But his mom realized what was going on, and she actually lunged at him, trying to, stop what he was doing. And she actually caught too. She got shot in the chest and in the head. At that point, he proceeded to kill 11-year-old David, 9-year-old Teresa, and 13-year-old Carol. James then went into the living room and shot the rest of his nieces and nephews, 12-year-old Anne, 17-year-old Leonard III, 16-year-old Michael, 15-year-old Thomas, and then poor 4-year-old baby John. He then went back and actually shot everybody one more time just to make sure that they were dead and finished. And then he just calmly sat there for the next 3 hours. After he sat there for 3 hours, he finally called the police, simply saying there's been a shooting, and then hung up the phone. And he just waited for police to, at that point, arrive. James made no attempt to run, to lie or hide and say that he didn't do it. He admitted to the murders and he was immediately taken into custody. James was actually arrested that same day and charged with aggravated homicide. He actually refused to answer any questions and was very uncooperative. Detectives and police say that it was very obvious that his plan immediately was to go for the insanity plea, which that's exactly what he did. James actually cleared 35 rounds. The county prosecutor actually, when they visited the scene of the crime, they stated that there was so much blood on the first floor that the blood actually started to seep through the floorboards and drip down to the basement and stain the floorboards in the basement and the bricks in the basement. And to this day, it's actually still in the home, the blood stains. The original trial was held in Hamilton, Ohio. The 3-jury judge panel actually immediately convicted him of 11 counts of murder and actually sentenced him to life in prison. However, due to the nature and just the public awareness of the case, that was quickly overturned and a mistrial was granted, and they had to actually retry him for the crime. The retrial was actually held in Findlay, Ohio. This time they heard testimony in regards to James inquiring about the silencers, him actually doing target practice just because it seemed like he was preparing to kill his family. Now, although James never really came forward and gave a reason, a lot of people believe that the reason and his plan behind the murders were to commit the murders, plead insanity, go away for a few years in a mental hospital, and then be released and have $300,000 waiting on him in life insurance payouts from his family. Now, on his second trial, he again was convicted on all 11 counts of murder. However, on an appeal, a new trial was actually set. Now, this time, his attorney was really pushing for them to see that he was a little nutso in the brain. Well, let me not say that. To see that he was actually insane at the time. Now, we all know that he had some mental health issues clearly going on with just his paranoia and then his depression as a whole. Now, on his appeal trial, he was actually convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, and that was for his mother and his brother. Now, on the other 9 counts, he was actually found not guilty by reason of insanity. So their mindset was that due to the nature and just the relationship and the turmoil of him growing up and just the whole family dynamic, he intentionally killed his brother and his mom. But then at that point, he snapped somehow and just went to killing everybody else. He received 1 life sentence for each count of murder to be served consecutively. Now, as of October 2021, James does still remain incarcerated. He's actually incarcerated in Franklin Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. He has went up for parole a few times, but obviously was denied. Now, James's next parole hearing is actually set for February of 2025. So he has some time. At the time of his next hearing, he should be about 90 years old. So I guess we're gonna see, but it's looking like, it's looking like he is never gonna be released. But that's all I have for today's case. Definitely go ahead and leave your comments and your thoughts in the comments section and let me know what you thought about this video and your opinions on James and his whole family and just everything at hand. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel and like and share my videos. And until next time, and thank you so very much for watching Murder Mills.